Hey there, you rates. In this video here, we're going to go through exercise 6C, which is to do with dividing a quantity, so an amount, by a certain ratio. But let's start off with let's visualize what a ratio is. So when you say the ratio of 1 to 3, okay, and it says how many parts are there, what you need to understand is, say, in this example, let's say I did 1 cup of sugar. For every 1 cup of sugar, there's going to be then 3 cups of water, okay? Then visually what this looks like is you've got 1 part that is sugar, and then for every 1 cup of sugar, then there's 1 cup of water, 2 cups of water, and 3 cups of water there. So there's 3 here, and then there's 1 for sugar. So in total, there are total of 4 parts, or 4 cups in total that was used. So when they ask how many parts are there, we're simply adding them together. 1 plus the 3 gives me 4 parts. Now that means that the ratio 1 to 3 is actually saying that out of 4 components, 1 out of 4 parts, so 1 out of 4 is actually sugar. Okay, so 1 out of 4 is sugar. So a quarter of it would be sugar out of that package. And then 3 quarters must be then water. True? Because if I drew out the parts here, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, 1 quarter is sugar, and then obviously the next 3 quarters must be water, right? So that would be the fraction. That's essentially what we're saying. So it's a quarter of the total, and 3 quarters of the total is water. So a quarter of it is sugar, and 3 quarters of the total is water. That's the concept. Now, if you understand that, then here's the method to then figuring out your components. You're literally doing the first part. Method 1 is you first calculate the total number of parts. So you need to know how many parts are there. So there's 4 parts in total. And then you multiply, that's the key thing, you multiply the fraction to the total quantity. So this part is where we're going to practice. Okay, so I'm going to show you. And you can use a calculator as well, or you can do it by hand. But let's do this example here. Okay, so there's only 2 steps to it. Here we go. Step number 1. In this example, you've got 30 meters. Whoops, what's going on there? You've got 30 meters, and what you want to do is you want to divide it by the ratio of 2 to 3. Sorry, it's just jumping around for a bit here. So where's my pen? It's taking a while to get the pen up. Not sure why this is consistently happening. Yep, okay, I can write on it now. Let's zoom. I think it's the zooming part. All right, zoom. Here we go. Oh, no, not again. All right, there we go. 30 meters is a ratio of 2 to 3. So this is my ratio. So we first ask step number 1, how many parts are there? Well, there are 2 plus 3, a total of 5 parts. All right? So we know that actually this 2 here means that there's going to be 2 out of 5 that belongs to the 2. And then there's 3 out of 5 that belongs to something else. Okay, so I just don't know what the quantities represent right now, or the ratio. I don't know what it represents. It could have been, I don't know, sugar and water again. It doesn't make sense in this scenario. But the point is the 2 and the 3 represent something that we don't know. Okay, now step number 2 is that you take that fraction. So if you want to know what that 2 represents, well then it's 2/5 of the total quantity. Now what's the total? The total was 30. So you can actually type on your calculator here 2/5, which on your calculator is 2 divide 5. If you're using one of those scientific calculators that you can't type a fraction, please put a bracket around them. And then you multiply that to 30, you should get your answer. Now, for those who aren't using a calculator, if you want to do it by hand, well, one of the things that we can see is 2 over 5 times 30 over 1, because 30 as a fraction is 30 over 1. And what you can see is that there's a common factor that we can simplify. So what number goes in a 5 and a 30? Well, I know they both have a common factor of 5. So if you simplify that, that becomes 1, and 5 goes in 30 6 times. And so this now gives me 2 over 1 times 6 over 1. And if you remember multiplying fractions, top with top and bottom with bottom. So here I'll be multiplying top with top, bottom with bottom, and that essentially gives me 12 over 1. Again, if you had a calculator, you would have got the answer from the very first step, but the answer is 12, because 12 over 1 is the same thing as 12. So now what I've done there is that the two parts, when we say divide 30 meters into a ratio of 2 to 3, what I now know is that if 30 meters was this whole block, if this whole block was 30 meters, right? Then now I know this part here, so 1, 2, so let me just divide into 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, probably missing another one. 5 parts, 2 of it is now 12. 12 meters. That's your 2 ratio. That's 2. That's 1. That's 2. Then the other part was 3, yeah? So here's 1, 2, 3. Well, then what would the other 3 combine to be? Well, logically, I could do 30 take away 12 to know what's left over, and we know that is 18. But we can prove it by actually doing 3/5 of 30. Okay, so I then take 3/5 times 30, and again, same thing. I can say that's 3 over 5 times 30. You can use a calculator, but hopefully you realize that, again, 5 and 30 can simplify to 3, 1 and 6 there. And so that becomes 3 times 6, which is 18, and it's 18 on 1, and you can see it's 18 meters. So when we say, let's divide that 30 meters in a ratio of 2 to 3, what we're really saying is that if this whole block here was 30 meters, if this whole block here was 30 meters, well, I've now split it up into 2 to 3 ratio where it is, this is 12, and the other part must be 18 meters, and that 12 to 18, 12 meters to 18 meters is the same thing as saying 2 to 3 ratio. And you can do that by simplifying it. And you see what's a common factor between 12 and 18? Hopefully you realize it's a factor of 6. So if I divide both by 6, you can see it's a 2 to 3 ratio. So I've successfully divided 30 meters in a ratio of 2 to 3. Okay? So the answer is 12 meters for that group and then 18 meters for that group. Okay? Now I know this one doesn't really make sense yet because it's probably more logical if you're dealing with money. So let's do an example where you deal with money. Okay? So let's say something like this. Say you've got an example 2, so next page. If you had $200 and you had 3 people that chipped in to buy a lottery ticket to win $200, right? Let's say you got Jamie, you've got Alex, and you've got, I don't know, let's go with Bob, okay? So if you got Jamie, Alex, and Bob, let's say Jamie put in $1, chipped in $1, Alex chipped in $2, and Bob chipped in $2, so that's why it's 1 to 2 to 2, then they happen to win the lottery and they win $200, right? Now it's unfair to just take $200 and divide it by 3 since these guys paid more and Jamie paid the least. So when they share it, they have to share it equally so that everyone gets a fair share of the $200 rather than dividing it by 3. So how would you divide it equally so that it's fair for everyone? And that's where this is where you use your understanding of ratios. So here we say, well, it's 1 to 2 to 2, right? So that means how many parts are there? Well, it's 1 plus 2 plus 2, that's step number 1, is a total of 5 parts. Okay, so there are 5 parts in total. So if you were to draw a picture for this, think of it like this. Jamie puts in 1 part, so I'm going to do J for Jamie. Alex puts in 2 parts, so Alex 1, Alex 2. Bob puts in 2 parts. But you can see that if we count the number of parts there, that's 5 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. True? So that's how much they put in so far. Now, that means in terms of a fraction, out of 5, Jamie only contributed 1 out of 5 of the total amount. And Alex contributed 2 out of 5 of the total amount, whilst Bob contributed 2 out of 5 of the total amount. So that means when we write it as a fraction, we can say that, well, for Jamie, it was 1/5. For Alex, it was 2/5. And then for Bob, that was also 2/5 as well. So that means if you want to work out, well, how much will Jamie actually get Well, Jamie will get out of that prize of $200. That's the total amount, right? Out of that $200, Jamie only deserves 1/5 of it because he only contributed 1/5 of the total for the ticket, right? So if we were to calculate this now, we can then say, all right, well, it's 1/5 times 200. Now you can use a calculator or you can do it by hand. And again, if you do it on a calculator, you can do 1 divide 5. So make sure to put in brackets 1 divide 5, and then you type times 200, and it should be fine. But if you want to do it by hand, well, doing it by hand, we know that it's 1 over 5 times 200 over 1. And you see if you can simplify anything, and I can already see that 5 and 200 have something in common. They both have a factor of 5. So I can divide them both by 5, and that simplifies it down nicely for me. 5 goes into 5 once, whilst 5 goes into 240 times. And then, so now when we multiply fractions, top with top, bottom with bottom, then it's 40 and 1, which is the same thing as saying 40. So what am I saying there? I'm saying that Jamie deserves $40 of the $200 that they won together. Okay, does that make sense? So that means Jamie gets $40 when we share it out because Jamie only contributed $1 to buy the ticket, right? Whereas Alex and Bob, in this case, Alex, let's go write it again. Alex contributed 2/5 of the total. So that means, and the same thing with Bob. So that means whatever Alex gets, Bob's going to get the same amount as well. So you only need to calculate it once. So really, you just need to figure out, well, Alex will get 2/5 of 200. So to work out 2/5 of 200, same thing again. You can write 2/5 times 200 over 1. And we already simplified this before. That was 1 and that was 40. I should do that in different colors so you don't get confused. Let's do that in different colors. That's 1 and that's 40. And so really you're doing 2 over 1 times 40 over 1. And that gives you 80 over 1, which gives you $80. Okay, and so that means, therefore, Bob also gets $80 as well. Okay, so together, if you think about it now, Jamie gets $40, Alex gets $40, and Bob gets $40. Now, does that all add up to, oh, so not 40, 80 and 80. Whoops, my bad. 80 and 80. Now, does that all add up to 200? So let's think about 80 plus 80 is 160. And then plus the 40, yes, that does give you a total of $200. So that's now nicely shared, that because Alex and Bob contributed the same amount at the start to buy the ticket, they deserve more of the winnings than Jamie, and they both have the same amount. So Alex and Bob got $80, whilst Jamie got 40. Does that make sense? See, so the purpose of using the ratio is then to calculate that contribution, and it's to understand that the ratio can actually be converted as a proportion, which is the fraction component. Let's do it again. Let's do this example here. Last one. So the ratio of boys to girls at a school is 4:5. So remember, because it says boys to girls, this must be boys, this must be girls. So boys is a 4, and then girls is 5, right? So if there are 240 boys, so now we know that there are 240 boys at this particular school, how many students are there in total? So we don't know what the total amount is, right? So we don't know how many there are in terms of girls. But here's the logic. Here's the logic. If it's going to stay in the same ratio, then whatever you do to one side, you have to do the same to the other. So the question is, how do I go from 4 to 240? Well, I had to multiply by what? 4 times 60. Because 4 times 60 will give you 240. That also means 5 needs to multiply to 60. And that tells me that there must be then 300 girls if it is in a ratio of 4:5. So now that I know that the total for girls is 300, well then the total number of parts must be 240 plus 300, which gives me now, in this case, 540 parts in total, so hence 540 students. Okay, so that's one way, that's another sort of angle to solve problems with ratios, but really this is probably the most application-based that makes it more understandable, I would say example 2. Example 2 with the money, and then think of it as a lottery ticket, people contributing. Then how do you split the money so that it's fair for everyone? Often, people think just to take $200 and then divide it by 3 people, but it's not fair if someone contributed more of the work. Okay? So that's the idea. Hopefully that makes sense. And if you need further support, this is a really nice exercise to get involved in. Please do a lot more questions here. So practice 1 to 5, but I really recommend you guys to do more problem solving because this is a really good exercise for tests and all that. Okay?